Welcome to the Wild West. One day in September 1848, an African American miner was walking along the San Francisco waterfront. He heard someone calling to him. It was a wealthy white traveler who wanted someone to carry his bags. This guy may have been used to bossing around slaves back east, but things were different out west. The black man pulled a bag from his pocket, showed off more than $100 in gold, and said, "Do you think I'll lug trunks when I can get that much in one day?" What a puzzling place. "This is the best place for black folks on the globe," one black miner wrote to his wife in Missouri. "All a man has to do is to work and he will make money." This was enough to draw African Americans to California from all over the United States. Some were escaping from slavery, some were free men hoping to find enough gold to buy the freedom of family members still enslaved in the South. "What a puzzling place it was," Leonard Kipp said soon after stepping ashore. A continual stream of active population was winding among the casks and barrels which blocked up the place where the sidewalk ought to have been. Kipp was amazed by the diversity of the crowds. White and black, Americans, Chinese, Mexicans, Germans, Chileans, Irish, Native Americans, Hawaiians, all with different styles of hair and dress, speaking different languages, racing between stores, bars, music halls, and gambling houses. "The town seems running wild after amusement," he said. And wild after money, too. By the time travelers got to San Francisco, they were so feverish to find gold that some started digging for it right in the streets of town. And they often found it. What they didn't know was that the streets had been salted or secretly sprinkled with gold dust. This was done by creative store owners who wanted to get people excited, then sell them mining gear at shockingly high prices. Another clever merchant heard complaints about the enormous rats that were eating and pooping on all the food in the city. He imported a shipful of cats from Mexico. They sold out quickly at $8 to $12 each. Then there was the guy who declared he was a doctor and started seeing patients. No one in town was aware that he had no medical training at all until someone he knew from back east showed up and demanded, "What do you know about being a doctor?" "Well, not much," the man admitted. In his own defense, he added, "I killed just as few as any of them." Luckily for this guy, people were too busy making money to worry about small details. One such detail: the city's dirt streets got so muddy that crates, dogs, horses, and sometimes people actually sank under the surface and rotted beneath the stinky brown ooze. A sign on one street warned travelers that the way was not safe for man or beast. "The street is impassable, not even jackassable." People were too busy to worry that no one nearby was growing food and that everything had to be shipped in from thousands of miles away. The result was incredibly high prices. "Money here goes like dirt. Everything costs $1 or dollars," said an astonished 21-year-old named Enos Chrisman. Back home, he could have bought a big bag of potatoes for a few pennies. "Today, I purchased a single potato for 45 cents. But what did any of this matter when there was gold to be found? Most people stayed in town only long enough to buy supplies. Then they headed east for what they called the diggings, the gold-rich streams flowing down from the Sierra Nevada. Off to the diggings. As soon as he arrived at the diggings, a hopeful miner from Britain named William Ryan ran into an old friend. "Good morning, Fillmore," Ryan said to his friend. "What, you?" Fillmore shouted, shaking Ryan's hand. "How did you come, and where did you start from? You are looking all the worse for wear." Ryan looked over his friend, at his shredded clothes, his filthy whiskers, his face caked with dirt. "I can't say you look quite as dapper, Fillmore, as you did the day we went ashore." Fillmore confessed that he had been having tough times. "For several days after I got here, I did not make anything," he explained. "But since then I have, by the hardest work, averaged about $7 a day." This surprised Ryan. Like most new miners, he knew nothing about gold mining, but he imagined it was pretty easy. You just bend down and collect the shiny nuggets, right? It's more luck than anything," Fillmore said. "But luck or no luck, no man can pick up gold, even here, without the very hardest labor, and that's a fact. Some think that it is only to come here, squat down anywhere, and pick away. But they soon find out their mistake. I never knew what hard work was until I came here." When you read letters and journals of miners in California, you see lots of stories like Fillmore's. People came with dreams of scooping up glittering lumps of gold, and this did happen once in a while. One miner found a hunk of solid gold weighing 195 pounds, but most miners spent long days squatting in chilly streams, scooping up pans full of dirt. After filling the pan with water, the miner gently rocked the pan back and forth, allowing the water to carry off the dirt little by little. Flakes and dust-sized bits of gold, if there were any, collected at the bottom of the pan, because gold is about 8 times heavier than dirt. There is gold here in abundance, one miner said of the California diggings, but it requires patience and hard labor, with some skill and experience to obtain it. Or, as another disappointed miner put it, the chances of making a fortune in the gold mines are about the same as those in favor of drawing a prize in the lottery. There was still good money to be made, though. Miners who were lucky enough to find a good spot and who worked from sunup to sundown were often able to collect 1 to 2 ounces of gold a day. An ounce of gold was worth $16. Back east, in comparison, skilled workers earned about $1.50 for a 12-hour day. So you can see why people kept coming to California. As one miner explained to his wife, "I am willing to stand it all to make enough to get us a home, and so I can be independent of some of the darned censored that felt themselves above me because I was poor." Getting crowded out here. Nearly 100,000 people raced to California in 1849. They even earned their own nickname, 49ers. Thousands more were on the way. In fact, this was the largest movement of people the world had ever seen. Gold can do that. One result, the most promising gold mining spots were getting crowded with tents, shacks, and miners. And garbage. One miner described walking along a stream, quote, strewn with old boots, hats, shirts, old sardine boxes, empty tins of preserved oysters, empty bottles, worn-out pots, and kettles. Desperate miners were digging in the streams, along the banks, even in the streets of the mining camp. One woman found gold flakes while sweeping the dirt floor of her shack. She shoved aside the table, started digging, and found hundreds of dollars worth of gold. Most miners' experience was more like that of William Swain, who had come west from his farm in New York. "My first day's work in the business was an ounce," he wrote to his wife. "The second was $35, and the third was $92. That was followed by day after day when he found nothing. Meanwhile, the high price of food and supplies was eating away at his little pile of gold. Swain had boldly promised to bring home $10,000. "As soon as I can get the rocks in my pocket, I shall hasten home as fast as steam can carry me," he told his family. "Oh, William, I cannot wait much longer," his wife Sabrina wrote to him. "I want to see you so bad." "I must have the $10,000, Swain insisted. But in a letter to his brother, Swain admitted that things were going badly. "George, I tell you, mining among the mountains is a dog's life," he said. He even warned George to give up any dreams of gold mining. "There was some talk between us of your coming to this country," Swain wrote. "For God's sake, think not of it. Stay at home." Still, Swain was committed to staying long enough to make his fortune. So were thousands of others. Just how eager were these miners to find some gold? One day at a mining camp, a miner died and his friends gathered for the funeral. They knelt around an open grave as a fellow miner and former minister started reading some prayers. After a few minutes, the minds of the grieving miners started drifting toward dreams of gold. Their hands started sifting through the dirt that had been dug up from the grave. The minister saw that the men weren't paying attention to the service. He opened his mouth to complain, but then he noticed what they had noticed: yellow flecks in the dirt. "Boys, what's that?" he asked. He took a closer look, then answered his own question. "Gold, and the richest kind of diggings. The congregation are dismissed." The dead man was dragged away to be buried somewhere else, while the minister ran off for his mining shovel and pan. "I've got a better idea." Wasn't there an easier way to make money than sifting through dirt from your dead friend's grave? Definitely. The surest way to make money in California was not to be a gold miner, but to sell stuff to gold miners. Merchants made fortunes selling food, mining supplies, and clothes, gladly taking miners' gold in exchange. In mining camp bars, the price for a glass of whiskey was 1 pinch of gold dust, which explains why bar owners like to hire bartenders with fat fingers. When a 24-year-old Jewish immigrant named Levi Strauss arrived in San Francisco, he was amazed to see store owners racing each other out to his ship in rowboats, each shouting that he would buy all the goods on board. The local stores must be pretty busy, Strauss figured. He set up his own shop where miners told him they were always looking for pants that wouldn't fall apart on them. So Strauss and a friend invented a new kind of pants made from tough denim fabric, dyed blue, and held together with metal rivets. And that's how blue jeans were born. Women in California saw other money-making opportunities, once the men had missed. There were no laundries in San Francisco, for example. Most men just walked around in smelly shirts. Those who were picky about cleanliness sent their clothes to be washed in Hawaii or China, then waited 6 months to get them back. Women started local laundries and offered much quicker service. When Lizina Stanley Wilson came to California with her husband and kids in 1849, she had the usual dreams of finding a fortune in gold. but soon she discovered a much better way to make money. She was bending over a campfire cooking dinner for her family when a hungry miner walked up and said, "I'll give you $5, ma'am, for them biscuits." "Sounded like a fortune to me," she said. She stood there silently, too surprised to answer. The man thought she was driving a hard bargain. He took out a $10 gold piece and dropped it into her hand. "I made some more biscuits for my family," she remembered. The next day, as the family drove into Sacramento, the coin fell from a box and rolled out through the bottom of the wagon. But Wilson knew where to get more. Sure enough, as she cooked at her family's campsite a few days later, a man walked up and got right to the business. "Madam, I want a good, substantial breakfast cooked by a woman." I asked him what he would have. Wilson said, "2 onions, 2 eggs, a beef steak, and a cup of coffee." He ate it, thanked me, and gave me $5, she said. If I had asked $10, he would have paid it. The family sold their oxen and put the money into a restaurant and hotel. The profits were piling up until they lost everything in a flood. So they moved on to another mining town where Wilson started selling mills again. She soon saved enough to buy a new hotel and was making great money until they lost everything in a fire. "I, as before, set up my stove and camp kettle," Wilson said. She started all over again, selling meals to miners and saving up to buy a bigger business. Well, no one said life out west was going to be easy. Advancing civilization? One day, a miner named Daniel Noer walked into a store and paid for his supplies with gold dust, as miners always did. The store owner weighed the dust and told Noer what it was worth, but the figure seemed too low. Noer asked the man to weigh the gold again. He came back in a few minutes and apologized. Noer remembered, saying that he had weighed it in the scales that he used when he traded with the Indians. Many mining town merchants were doing the same thing. They had 2 scales to weigh gold, one for whites and one for Native Americans. Gold always seemed to weigh less on the scale used for Native Americans. This brings up an important point about the gold rush. It looked very different from different points of view. Even though most American miners never struck it rich, they saw the search as the adventure of a lifetime. "It is far more pleasing to me than to sit daily locked up in a dirty office," said one miner from Pennsylvania. To the Indians of California, the gold rush looked less like an adventure and more like an invasion. Miners drove away the deer and other game that Indians had always relied on for food. They chopped down forests and polluted salmon streams. When some Native Americans tried to join the search for gold, they were violently driven away from good mining spots. And as had happened in Oregon, newcomers brought new diseases that devastated the native villages. Everyone saw this happening, but to many Americans it seemed like a necessary step toward making California part of the United States. The San Francisco Bulletin put it bluntly, "It is a painful necessity of advancing civilization that the Indians should gradually disappear." They didn't disappear, but it was close. Before 1849, there were about 150,000 Indians in California. By 1870, fewer than 30,000 would still be alive.